Hey, I'm Rob. Today we're going to be building out a full-on end-to-end marketing system for a pole dancing studio that I own out here in beautiful Philippines with my partner. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using Claude Code, and we're going to be using all of the new trending techniques and features that just make Claude Code a super freaking powerhouse at building out full-on apps. And we're going to be Dockerizing them, putting them in Docker containers so that they can be spun up whenever they're needed. Kind of like microservices. So each little aspect of it will be a little microservice that we can just, kind of use as a Lego brick and plug and play them into other apps or into one giant monolithic build that we'll build towards, basically. So yeah, let's get into it. Let's see how we can get this run. So first things first is I'm going to talk to Claude, and we're going to get it to plan out basically the sub agents, the skills that I may need to build out a project, and just basically talk to it about exactly all the features that I want and how I want it to be set up. And in this case, we're going to be using Airtable as a database, which will just basically hold all our marketing content. It will have all the image generation, copy generation, stuff like that, and then be able to push from that Airtable to wherever I would want that stuff to be hosted. So on social media profiles or onto websites, stuff of that nature. That would be the first setup. Just get it to guide you through how to set up all the APIs and stuff like that you need. And basically get it to tell you what are the smartest ways to be able to set up the infrastructure that you would like for the product that you're trying to create for your own company. I run a pole dancing studio with my partner out in Philippines. And when it comes to creating content, it's thousands of pieces of content every single year. We used to do all of this manually, and now we just have tools to do this. I'm building a system where I type one event into Airtable and 6 AI services produce the campaign. But first, I want to show you exactly why we use 6 services, AI services, to get what we want instead of just one-shotting a prompt. This is so that we can get really granular and get exactly the product that we desire. So imagine I just gave a huge prompt to Claude such as this that just told it to do everything that I wanted it to do, one-shotted. You can see we put everything like the event details, the marketing brief, post copy, Instagram story copy, Telegram, TikTok, Wix event page, Facebook event, image prompts, email secrets, sponsorship, deck copy, the press release, character limits, and then tried to get it to generate all of that. You can imagine it would start getting a little confused, start hallucinating a little bit, start off having great copy, but that would start deteriorating at the end. It would quickly get generic. Tones would blend together, and I wouldn't want to be doing this 12 times in a row for different events or posts that we're trying to make, right? Most people blame the AI, saying that agentic coding doesn't work, but usually it's not the AI. It's definitely about how you use it. So you need to protect that context window because that is probably your scarcest resource. So basically first, what I got to do is I'm giving access to my Airtable via MCP. Then you can basically just ask Claude how to do that and set that up for you. And it will go ahead and create all those things. We'll also go ahead and create the table specified in the way that I have already prompted Claude to. Probably will look different for you, depending on what kind of features and what kind of things you're trying to build out. This is basically going to act as my very basic database for now. See, a lot of people talk about how the AI gets worse, and most of the time it's because the AI is getting worse because you're running out of context and you're kind of feeding noise into the signal that way. So you can see there's a trade-off here. You can do it all in one prompt, kind of fast and a little bit sloppy, or you could just invest in some architecture like skills and agents or sub-agents and build something that's much more robust. And why would we want to choose quality all the time? So this is a diagram of the architecture right here. Basically, 6 services, each one does one thing. The brief enricher takes raw event data and produces a structured marketing brief, doesn't know that images exist, doesn't know about Wix, That's basically all it does. The copywriter will take what is outputted by the Enricher brief and generates platform-specific ad copy. It knows about Instagram tone. It knows about Telegram or Taglish. It knows about TikTok Gen Z slang, but it has no idea how to generate images and stuff like that. So this is called context isolation. Each service has a tiny focused job, and yeah, the smaller the context, the better the output. And the manager, which is the orchestrator, is the only service that knows about all of the others. And here's what's especially cool, the way that I'm going to be building these services. It uses exact same pattern, specialist AI agents basically, that each do one thing. So the main agent is the manager. It's not a worker. You can look at it like this. The orchestrator is not doing anything else. The orchestrator has protected context. You would protect a CEO's calendar or something like that. So the CEO is not writing the ad copy. They delegate it to the specialists. And what's especially meta about the way that I'm building these services is that with specialist AI agents, it mirrors also the architecture of the actual service. So sub-agents will be building sub-agent services. The build pattern is basically the product pattern. So basically it comes down to the context, the model that we're going to be using, the prompt, what we're going to be asking it to do, and the tools that we can actually execute, and we're going to try to optimize all four using Claude Code. So as you notice, some of these services actually depend on each other, but things such as the Wix publisher and the social formatter, they don't really depend on anything else, so they can be built parallel. So shout out to indie dev Dan, who opened my mind on threading and having multiple threads and running parallel. Also to the OG Boris Cherny on just how he uses multiple terminals to be able to throw these up. So let me show you real quick what the project consists of so that you can get an idea of how everything works and the bones of setting up something so that it can actually run by itself and build out things for you even while you sleep. So obviously we always start out with Claude.md, which is basically the architecture. So it's the blueprints that you would give to someone to build out the building, right? It's the spec. Every AI agent reads this first. It describes every service's contract, the inputs, the outputs, and what rules each agent should follow. I'll drop all of this in a GitHub repo for you so you can all take a look at what's going on underneath the hood. Just check out the link in the description and everything should be there. Next, one of the biggest parts of this is building out the PRD, which is basically the product requirements document that will list every single service that I have already shown you. And this is just so that we can iterate through the list with the Ralph loop and basically tell Claude if the service has been built out and what to work on next, essentially. And here under services, you can see that each service has its own stub. It has its own Docker file ready to go. And basically what we're going to be doing is filling out the rest and filling in the blanks with AI. Now let me show you something different from what most people do. So instead of opening Claude Code and doing everything myself, I'm going to use specialized agents. So just to iterate, we're using a Ralph loop probably in a later video. I'll just get into how we built the first couple of services and then maybe follow up with a different video on us actually using the Ralph loop either overnight or with a human in the loop so that we can see how that works where it just iterates upon itself. It's basically a for loop that keeps on moving forward on each next task until all the tasks are finished. It's basically a to-do list that will build everything automatically. So before we get anything really started, let's just dive into the setup. Most important when you get it all set up is the Claude.md file. This is what everything starts off with. This is basically the blueprint for the architect or the person building the building. It is the spec. It is how all the AI agents will know what rules to follow, what inputs and outputs should be received or given out. And yeah, it holds all the context for every single agent that we're going to build out here. The next thing that's most important is probably this prd.json file. Basically, it's a product requirements document, which has been very famous for building out AI projects, right? And basically, these are just all the features that we want from our app, each one with an acceptance criteria and something to be tested by. And today we're going to be building the first three, and it's built out like this because we're going to be using a Ralph loop, which is basically a for loop that will just keep iterating through this file until everything is finished, everything is tested. And the way you can think of it is as a to-do list that allows the Ralph loop to basically get everything automatically done, either with a human in the loop or while you sleep overnight. Each feature also has a thread type, which I will be utilizing later. Basically lets us know if we can run these in parallel and things like that using multiple agents. Yeah. Last thing I'd like to show is basically the services. You can see here we have them all set up, each one with their own stub with a Docker file set up. And basically what we're going to be doing is filling the gaps using AI. We're ready to implement feature number 1. Go through and build out the brief enricher, implement everything within the services brief enricher tab, and run all the tests so that we make sure that everything is working correctly. And it will just go on and do its thing. So it's important to note here that I have already built out 4 agents for brand, voice, coder, planner, and reviewer that are going to be running in tandem to help me build this out. So each agent has their own system prompt, their own context window. So basically when I call them, they're isolated, they do the job, and then they add back to the main orchestration agent. So we started off with a plan. Everything looks good here. And then we're going to clear the context, and then we're going to get it to try to use those sub-agents that we've already built out. So once again, I have 4 agents built out. A planner that designs the architecture, as we can see here. A reviewer that's running on a cheaper model, Haiku, because it just needs to check work. It doesn't have to do much creative work. And a brand voice that knows our brand, GGC's tone. So right now I'm the orchestrator of these agents running. In the next video, I'll show you how we can take me out of the loop completely. And you can see it just running through the Ralph loop without me. And then just take note that we will clear the context and we'll see how this works out. We're around 12% context right now. So for this feature, we won't be using much. We're just going to do 1 prompt, 1 agent, 1 thread, and that's done.
Something you're doing?
Feature 2 will be a little bit more intense, so I'll be bringing in the team. So you can see here it read the Claude MD. It's reading what needs to be in the brief, and then creating all of those pedantic services that need to be built out for the pipeline.
Ready to work.
And now it's running the tests, and it just finished those tests. 5 pedantic models put in. The main.py, generated ID, build Claude prompt. Yeah, everything looks good. Test main, everything passed. Verification, so looking good. So here we are with the context window at around 19%, still clean. So that's basically a base thread, a prompt, Claude Code working, and then the review. This is the simplest of agentic work, and everything is built off of this. Everything that will be built out in this series, parallel, overnight, automations, it will all be built off this idea. 3 phases, you prompt in the beginning, the work gets done in the middle, and then the review is done at the end. So it's just different types of AI agents running in chains, producing in parallel or automated. So if we tried to build all 6 services, we would probably have gassed out at 100%. And that's why we want to isolate each thing so that everything is just working the way that we want it to. So feature 2 is much more intense. The AI agent has to handle much more tonalities, different types of brand tonalities and stuff like that for each platform that we're going to be producing content for. And maybe having just 1 agent would allow it to lose focus. So we're going to bring in a team. First, we're going to put in here that we want to use the planner. So design the Copywriter service, Claude MD for the contract. I need the API spec, all Pydantic models, test cases for the multi-platform output, and edge cases for Taglish generation. And we'll get that started. One cool thing that I'm thinking about at the end of this project is basically kind of getting feedback both from Claude.ai and Claude Code on what parts of this project could be, a little bit more streamlined. So we could basically just prompt Claude Code to give us more skills or more sub agents that would help us with the build, based off of everything that it basically interacted with during the build process of all these services. So now we can see the planner output for the Copywriter service. This is basically how I planned out everything that we want to do with this service. Yeah, and it's just going to let us know how the platform should be working. It identified edge cases, tests that it can run through. And yeah, everything's looking good so far. What I'm trying to point out is that you can see how much depth that just one planning agent has by itself. It probably asked me questions that Claude Code wouldn't have asked on its own. So it's focus context and focus output. Basically exactly the same as the ideology of the services that we're building as microservices. Now for the next step, we want to use the coder. So at the coder, implement the Copywriter service using this plan, run the tests, read Claude MD. So instead of having to design, it's just going to focus on implementation, which is another huge power move right now. Basically, the coder is working from the planner's output. We are separating the two, so it's not being bogged down by any design choices that it may have to make. And we'll just keep this running. All right, so this should be done now. Looks like it's been fully implemented and verified. Verification test pass, 14 out of 14. MyPy, 0 errors. So looking pretty healthy right now. What I really want to emphasize here is that we're doing two different cognitive tasks, basically. So that's why we're separating planning and coding. And you can think about setting your environments up like that. Next, we'll just verify if everything is on our brand voice. So review Telegram copy output from the copywriter. Is the Taglish natural? Does it sound like the Good Girls Club? And I'll get back to you when that's done. So yeah, here we go. Here's the output. It's reviewing all of this, and then it's going to basically rate it 1 out of 5.
Ready to work.
And here you can see we use 3 tool uses for a total of 34.2K tokens, yet we are still at around 32% over here, so that's looking pretty good. Yeah, then it gave us back the scores and then some recommended changes. Want me to apply those changes? And I'll just say, yes, let's apply. And I'll get back to you after that. So brand voice is domain knowledge. It knows the vibe of everything. And this is something that you can't get from a generic coding agent. And you can basically scrape your website or all your chat histories or your message or your sales calls and stuff like that to be able to pull out all the domain knowledge that you have and basically create some giant prompt that you can feed in as a brand voice in this kind of way. So this is how real businesses and real cultural contexts, and in this case, real languages, can be used to build out a very specific business case, real life scenarios and not demos. So finally, we'll have the code review. And here you can see it was running off the cheapest model because basically it's just doing pattern matching. So this is how you can run agents without burning through your API budget. You want to kind of match the model to what the task is. So here you can see everything has passed the tests. So yeah, with 4 agents, we kind of use this B-thread architecture where we saved our main context window. Here you can see we're at around 39% context. We use 4 agents, 4 separate context windows. You can imagine that if we had used a planning agent, coding agent, a brand voice, as well as a reviewing agent all in one context window, we probably would have hit around 80 and gotten to the point where the output would start declining. So you can be sure that the sub agents didn't just save me time, but they saved me and preserved my context window. So this is basically B-thread architecture, where it's a thread that orchestrates other threads. In the next video, we'll use a Ralph loop where I will orchestrate myself out of the equation. Right now, I'm the manager. I decide what gets built, who builds it, and I review what is also built. In the next few videos, we'll show you how I could take myself out of the loop and not be the orchestrator, and eventually not be the reviewer either, and just see how we can fully automate these processes. So for the last feature of today's video, we're going to be using Docker Compose. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to take both services, we're going to wire them into containers so that they can talk to each other. This is infrastructure work, so I'll be using a C thread instead, which is a chain thread. And the way you can think about it is that it runs in a chain, and each new sequence relies on the previous sequence before it passing. So why do we think about it like this? Is because infrastructure is sequential by nature. It works in a chain naturally. You can't really health check between the container is built, and you can't really test the communication between the services until they're both running, right? Each step kind of relies on the previous one, and you can think of it as chain verification. So for creative work, we use B threads like the ones that I was using before, and for infrastructure work, we use C threads like the one I'm about to show you. Let's go in right now, and we'll just tell it, could you build the brief Enricher container? Oh, that got it completely wrong. So let me just copy and paste it over here. Build the brief Enricher container. There it goes, reading the Docker file to see how it should set this up. All right, so it seems to have been built successfully. Let's just ask. Test that it starts and it passes all health checks. So now we can see that the health check has passed, and it's going to clean up the container. Container starts cleanly. It's on the port 8001. Status is okay. Next, can we build the Copywriter container? Now you can see that it's built, and we can say test that it starts and that it passes all health checks. Now run Docker Compose up with both. So now you can see that it says that it's going to bring up all 6 services, but we only have the first 2. So it's just going to bring up the first 2. And here you can see both services running and healthy via Docker Compose. Awesome. So every service should have a health check. This isn't really optional. You can see as basically like a unit test, right? This is super important for our next video, because when we leave a Ralph loop on, let's say overnight, the first thing that it's going to want to do is have a health check before it responds, right? Because if the health check doesn't respond, it basically means that the service is broken and that it should stop. So the whole ideology here is basically build the feedback loops first, and then the automation will basically take care of itself. Okay. So here you can see the copy, right? Instagram posts, tone for each different platform. So yeah, basically what we built out so far is, it's not a full-on app per se just yet, but it is an API endpoint that is connected to all the services that we will be running, and basically what we have built. And you can see that the successful response will put out platforms and headline, body, CTAs, stuff like that, and should be working, right? We'll be building out the full-on dashboards, beautified, of course, in the next few videos, and you can stay tuned to see what it's like to have a full-on product being built out end to end. So yeah, there you have it. 3 features with 3 patterns. The first was base thread, single prompt, simple work. The second was a B thread, where we have 4 specialist agents, all orchestrated by yours truly. And then the third feature was the Docker feature, which was a C thread, where it's step-by-step infrastructure verification. So once again, we are optimizing for the prompt, the model, the tool calls, and the context that we are giving to the agents. But today I was acting as an orchestrator for each of the agents. I kicked off the agents, I reviewed every output, but what if I could automate that, right? So I've got 4 more services to build: an image generator, a publisher, an orchestrator, as well as a social media formatter. And I'm going to try to do that all while I get some sleep. So it's going to be one command, one for loop, one PRD file, and it's just going to iterate through it by itself. And that's basically all you need to ship code while you sleep and build products out for your business. So if you enjoyed this content or want to see anything more similar to this stuff, let me know in the comments. Let me know what kind of stuff you're interested in and if we could build anything out that you'd be into. And yeah, drop me a like if any of this helped you out. I really appreciate it. Thanks.